The first snowflake landed on her champagne glass like a tiny promise she wasn't sure she wanted to keep. Emma Fairchild stood outside Orso Ristorante in Midtown Manhattan, watching couples stream past in their holiday finery, wondering if walking away now would be less humiliating than sitting through whatever disaster her sister had arranged. The blind date. Christmas Eve. The cruelty of hope wrapped in red velvet and fairy lights. But before we step deeper into this memory, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Like this video so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe to follow the next journeys. She should have known better than to trust Claire with her love life. Her younger sister meant well, but Emma had learned the hard way that "he's perfect for you" usually meant he owns a ferret and collects commemorative spoons. Still, something about the way Claire's voice had softened on the phone, "Emma, just this once, trust me," had broken through her carefully constructed defenses. 7 years. That's how long it had been since she'd let anyone close enough to matter. 7 years since she'd walked away from the only man who'd ever looked at her like she hung the moon, because loving Gabriel Pierce had felt like standing too close to the sun. He'd been 24 then, ambitious and burning with dreams of building something that mattered. She'd been 21, working 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school, convinced that people like her, scholarship kids from Queens who knew the subway map better than they knew their own fathers, didn't belong in the world of people like him. His mother had made sure she understood that. The memory of Patricia Pierce's office still carried a chill sharper than December wind. The mahogany desk, the dismissive wave of a manicured hand. "You seem like a sweet girl, but Gabriel is destined for significant things. Surely you can see you'd only hold him back." Emma had seen it, had believed it enough to leave without saying goodbye, letting Gabriel think she'd simply stopped caring. It had been easier than admitting she'd loved him too much to become the weight that kept him from flying. Now she stood outside a restaurant on Christmas Eve, about to meet a stranger, wearing the navy dress she'd bought on sale, and told herself was sophisticated enough. The snow was falling harder, catching in her dark hair, melting against the warmth of her neck. Through the window she could see the soft glow of candles on white tablecloths, the shimmer of crystal, the kind of elegant simplicity that cost more than it looked. She checked her phone. Claire had texted the table number, reserved under Pierce. Emma's heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. Pierce was a common enough name. It was coincidence, nothing more. Gabriel Pierce was probably in Silicon Valley or London by now, running whatever empire he'd built from the ashes of his MBA and his mother's expectations. He certainly wasn't setting up blind dates through her sister. How would Claire even know him? But her hands were shaking as she pushed through the restaurant door, and the warmth that rushed over her felt less like comfort than exposure. The maitre d' smiled, took her coat, and gestured toward the back corner where the light was softer, more intimate. She walked through that restaurant the way people walk through dreams, each step both too slow and too fast, her heels clicking against hardwood like a countdown. She told herself to breathe, told herself she was being ridiculous, told herself that even if it was him, 7 years had probably turned her into someone he wouldn't even recognize. The girl from Queens who'd learned to carry her own weight, who'd survived her residency, who'd rebuilt herself into someone who didn't need saving. She turned the corner. Gabriel Pierce stood from the table, and the world tilted sideways. He'd changed. The boy who'd worn ambition like armor had been replaced by a man who wore a charcoal suit like a second skin, his dark hair touched with silver at the temples, his jawline sharper, his eyes... God, his eyes were exactly the same. Forest green and full of something that looked unbearably like recognition. Emma. Her name in his voice was a match struck in darkness. You came. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't reconcile the impossibility of standing 3 feet from the man she'd spent 7 years trying to forget on Christmas Eve, in a restaurant that suddenly felt too small to contain everything unsaid between them. I didn't know it was you. The words came out sharper than Emma intended, a reflex born from 7 years of self-protection. Claire didn't tell me. She didn't tell me either. Gabriel's voice carried something between apology and wonder. Not your name, just that someone needed to remember what Christmas used to feel like. He gestured to the chair across from him, a question in the movement. Will you stay? Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to walk back through that door into the snow and pretend this collision of past and present had never happened. But her body betrayed her, sinking into the chair as if it remembered how it felt to be near him, as if 7 years had only been 7 minutes. The waiter appeared with practiced invisibility, pouring water into crystal glasses that caught the candlelight and scattered it across the white tablecloth. Emma watched the play of light and shadow, easier than meeting Gabriel's eyes, easier than acknowledging how the years had carved him into something more devastating than memory. You look, he started. Different, she finished, because she knew it was true. The girl who'd left him had been soft with hope and hard with poverty. The woman sitting here had learned to stand in her own light. 7 years will do that. Beautiful, he said quietly. I was going to say beautiful. The word landed between them like something fragile. Emma lifted her water glass, just to have something to hold, something to keep her hands from shaking. Through the rim, his face fractured into planes of light. The strong nose, the mouth she'd once known the shape of, the small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident he'd told her about during a midnight conversation she could still recall with painful clarity. How did Claire... Emma began, then stopped. Of course. Gabriel's youngest sister, Sophie, had been in Emma's graduating class at nursing school. They'd been study partners during their final year. The connection was obvious now, inevitable even, like all the worst kinds of fate. Sophie mentioned you sometimes, Gabriel said, and there was something careful in his tone, as if he were walking through a room filled with glass. Said you were working at Mount Sinai, pediatric oncology. You asked about me. It wasn't a question. Every time she'd let me. He leaned forward slightly, and Emma caught the scent of him. Cedar and something clean, soap or aftershave, familiar enough to hurt. I never stopped wanting to know if you were happy. The confession sat heavy in the space between them. Emma looked down at her menu, the words blurring into meaningless shapes. How could she tell him that happiness had become something she'd learned to build from smaller things? A child's smile after a successful treatment, the first snow of the season, coffee that was exactly the right temperature. Because the larger things, the devastating things, had proven too dangerous to want. The ossobuco is excellent here, Gabriel said, shifting gears with the grace of someone who'd learned to read her silences. Or the branzino, if you're still avoiding red meat. She looked up sharply. You remember that? I remember everything, Emma. His eyes held hers, and for a moment, she saw past the expensive suit and the silver threading through his hair, past the man he'd become to the boy who'd sketched out dreams on coffee-stained napkins, who'd believed in impossible things. The question is whether you want me to. Before she could answer, the waiter returned, and Emma ordered the first thing her eyes landed on, barely registering what it was. Gabriel ordered with the easy confidence of someone used to fine dining, someone who'd grown into the world his mother had always intended for him. When they were alone again, the silence stretched like taffy, sweet and dangerous. Tell me about Mount Sinai, he said finally. Sophie says you're one of the best. Sophie exaggerates. But Emma felt herself softening despite everything, because talking about work was safe territory. Though we did get a research grant approved last month. New treatment protocol for neuroblastoma. If the trials go well... She stopped herself, suddenly aware she was about to launch into the technical details that made her eyes light up and most people's glaze over. "If the trials go well?" Gabriel prompted, leaning forward with an attention that was total, absolute. "It could change survival rates by 15, maybe 20%. She couldn't help the excitement that crept into her voice. "These kids, Gabriel, some of them are so young they don't even understand why they're sick. And if we can give them more time, better time, you're saving lives." He said it with a quiet certainty that made her chest tight. "You always said you would." "I'm trying." Emma took a sip of water, needing the pause. "What about you? Sophie mentioned you'd started a company, but she was vague on the details." Something flickered across Gabriel's face. Pride mixed with exhaustion, mixed with something else she couldn't name. "Pierce Technologies. We develop software for healthcare systems, streamlining patient data, reducing administrative burdens so doctors and nurses can focus on actual care instead of paperwork." "That's..." Emma stopped, genuinely surprised. She'd imagined him in finance or real estate, following the traditional path of family money. "That's incredible. It's a multi-million-dollar attempt to fix a broken system," he said, with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Some days I think we're making a difference. Other days I realize we're just putting digital band-aids on structural hemorrhaging." There it was, the idealism that had drawn her to him in the first place, still alive beneath the polish and power. Emma felt something shift in her chest, a small crack in the wall she'd built. Their appetizers arrived, and for a while, they ate in a silence that gradually lost its sharp edges. Emma noticed the way Gabriel's hands moved, precise, economical, and wondered if he noticed the way she'd learned to hold her fork, like someone who'd grown up with cloth napkins instead of paper towels. Small changes, large distances. "Why didn't you say goodbye?" The question came soft but sudden, like snow that's been building on a branch finally releasing. Gabriel set down his fork, his eyes finding hers with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "I came back to your apartment, and you were just gone. Landlord said you'd broken your lease. Your phone was disconnected. It was like you'd never existed." Emma's throat constricted. This was the conversation she'd known they'd have to have, the one she'd been dreading since the moment she'd recognized him. "Your mother..." "I know what my mother did." His voice carried an edge now, something raw breaking through the careful control. "Sophie told me, years later. The office visit. The check she tried to give you." Emma set down her wine glass with more force than intended, the sharp clink against the table echoing her sudden surge of anger. "She tried to pay me to leave you, Gabriel, like I was some kind of..." She stopped, swallowing the bitterness that still tasted fresh after 7 years. "But that's not why I left." Then why?" He leaned forward, and she could see the barely contained frustration in the set of his shoulders, the tightness around his mouth. "If it wasn't the money, if it wasn't my mother's threats, then what was it?" "Because she was right." The words came out jagged, torn from a place Emma had tried to bury. "Not about me being some gold digger. God, I never wanted your money. But about me holding you back. You had this brilliant future ahead of you, and I was drowning in student loans and night shifts, eating ramen for dinner 4 times a week because I couldn't afford anything else. Your world and mine, they didn't fit, Gabriel. They never did. That's..." He stopped, visibly restraining himself. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more dangerous. "That's the most condescending thing you've ever said to me. You decided what I needed, what I could handle, without ever asking me. You made yourself small so I could be big, as if I'd ever wanted that." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes and blinked them back furiously. "You don't understand what it was like. Sitting in that office while your mother showed me pictures of the kind of woman you were meant to marry. Someone from the right family, the right schools, someone who knew which fork to use at a 10-course dinner. I looked at those pictures and I saw your future, and I wasn't in it. Except I never married any of those women. Gabriel's voice cracked slightly. I tried. God knows my mother paraded enough eligible society daughters in front of me, but every single one of them was wrong because they weren't you. The confession hung between them, too raw, too honest. Emma stared at her half-eaten risotto, watching the saffron threads blur as tears finally spilled over despite her best efforts. She wiped them away quickly, angry at herself for breaking, angry at him for making her feel this much after she'd worked so hard to feel less. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, insufficient. I was 21 and terrified, and I thought I was doing the right thing. The noble thing. The coward's thing, Gabriel said. But there was no cruelty in it, just exhausted truth. We both know it, Emma. You ran because staying would have required you to believe you deserved to be loved by someone like me. And I let you go because somewhere deep down, I believed my mother when she said people from our world didn't marry people from yours. The honesty gutted her. Emma reached for her wine, needing something to do with her hands, but Gabriel's fingers caught her wrist before she could lift the glass. His touch was gentle, barely there, but it sent electricity racing up her arm. I'm not 24 anymore, he said quietly. I built the company I wanted to build, made the money that was supposed to matter, cut my mother out of my business decisions and most of my life. And you want to know the worst part? His thumb traced a small circle against her pulse point, and Emma wondered if he could feel how her heart was racing. Every success felt hollow, because the only person I wanted to share it with had disappeared. Emma forced herself to meet his eyes. You could have looked for me. I did. The admission came soft. For 2 years, I hired investigators, checked hospital records, called every Emma Fairchild in the tri-state area. You'd changed your phone number, your address, even went by your middle name for a while at work. It was like you'd erased yourself from my life so completely that I finally had to accept you wanted to be erased. She hadn't known. Had spent 7 years assuming he'd moved on easily, had maybe even been relieved to have the poor girl from Queens out of his spotless future. The reality, that he'd searched, that he'd grieved, made everything worse and better simultaneously. I went by Anne for 3 years, Emma whispered. Emma Ann Fairchild. Figured it would be harder to find me if I switched. I was so afraid you'd show up at the hospital one day and I'd have to... She stopped, unable to finish. Have to what? Have to watch you realize your mother was right. That I didn't fit. That loving me had been a phase, a rebellion. Something you'd outgrown. She pulled her wrist gently from his grasp, needing the distance to breathe. It was easier to leave first. Gabriel sat back, and she watched something shift in his expression. Anger giving way to understanding, giving way to something that looked like grief. We were idiots. Despite everything, Emma felt a laugh bubble up, watery and half-broken. Spectacular idiots. Young idiots, he amended, though that's probably not much of an excuse. Their entrees arrived, and the waiter's presence forced them both to compose themselves, to wipe away evidence of tears, to pretend they were just 2 people having dinner instead of 2 people excavating 7 years of buried hurt. When they were alone again, the silence felt different, less hostile, more hesitant, like they were both trying to figure out what came after confession. The blind date, Emma said finally, picking up her fork. This was Sophie's idea? Sophie and Claire, apparently. Gabriel cut into his steak with careful precision. They've been plotting for months, waiting for the right moment. Christmas Eve seemed appropriately theatrical. It's insane. But Emma was smiling slightly despite herself. They couldn't have just told us? Set up a normal coffee date? Would you have come? Gabriel asked. If you'd known it was me? Emma considered lying, then decided they'd had enough of that. No, probably not. Exactly. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. Our sisters know us too well. They knew the only way to get us in the same room was ambush. Remind me to kill Claire when I get home. I'll help you hide the body. Gabriel's smile was small but genuine. After I do the same to Sophie. They ate in more comfortable silence, and Emma found herself noticing small details. The way Gabriel's tie was slightly loosened, as if he'd been nervous before she arrived. The way he'd ordered her favorite wine without asking, suggesting he'd planned for the possibility it might be her. The way he kept glancing at her as if afraid she might vanish again if he looked away too long. What happens now? Emma asked quietly, setting down her fork. After tonight, I mean. Gabriel's eyes found hers, and she saw the question there, the vulnerability he was trying to hide behind careful composure. That depends. Are you going to disappear again? I don't know. It was the most honest answer she had. It's a lot, Gabriel. 7 years of history and one Christmas Eve dinner. I don't know how to process it all. Then don't. He reached across the table, his hand open, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. Don't process it tonight. Just stay. Finish dinner with me. Let me walk you home through the snow. Give me one evening where I get to pretend the last 7 years didn't happen, and you're still the girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during late-night study sessions. Emma looked at his hand, at the calluses she could see on his fingers despite the expensive watch and tailored suit. Evidence that he still worked with his hands somehow, still built things. She thought about walking away, about protecting herself from the possibility of more hurt. Then she thought about the alternative, spending the rest of her life wondering what might have happened if she'd been brave enough to stay. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The snow had transformed Manhattan into something from a forgotten dream by the time they left the restaurant. Emma stood on the sidewalk, Gabriel's suit jacket draped over her shoulders, because he'd insisted despite her protests, watching fat flakes drift through halos of streetlight. The city hummed with Christmas Eve energy, carols spilling from storefronts, couples hurrying toward midnight mass, the distant sound of someone playing saxophone in the subway. Which way? Gabriel asked, his breath visible in the cold air. Upper West Side, near Columbia Presbyterian. Emma pulled his jacket tighter, surrounded by the scent of him. It's a walk. Good. He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. I'm not ready for this night to end. They walked north through streets glazed with new snow, past buildings hung with lights, past windows glowing warm with family gatherings and Christmas trees. Emma was acutely aware of every point of contact. His arm beneath her hand, their shoulders occasionally brushing, the way their steps had fallen into sync without conscious effort. Tell me about the company, she said, because silence felt too dangerous, too full of things she wasn't ready to say. How did you end up in healthcare technology? Gabriel was quiet for a moment, their footsteps crunching through snow. You remember my father? Emma nodded. She'd met Richard Pierce only once, a kind man with Gabriel's eyes who'd seemed perpetually exhausted. He'd died of a heart attack when Gabriel was 23, just months before she'd left. After he died, I found out he'd been misdiagnosed for years, Gabriel said, his voice carefully controlled. High blood pressure dismissed as stress. Warning signs missed because his records were scattered across 3 different systems that didn't communicate. By the time they realized it was serious, the damage was irreversible. Gabriel... Emma stopped walking, turning to face him. I didn't know. How could you? You were gone by then. There was no accusation in his tone, just fact. I threw myself into work, into building something that might prevent other families from losing someone the way we lost him. Pierce Technologies was built on grief and guilt, and the desperate need to feel like his death meant something. The confession cracked something open in Emma's chest. She understood that kind of purpose, that kind of driving need to make senseless loss make sense. Is that why you never married? Because you were too busy building monuments to your father? No. Gabriel started walking again, and Emma fell into step beside him. I didn't marry because I kept comparing every woman to a ghost, to the girl who left me and took some essential part of me with her when she went. The words should have felt romantic, but instead they landed heavy with resentment and longing in equal measure. Emma felt the weight of them, the responsibility of having shaped 7 years of his life by her absence. That's not fair, she said quietly. You can't put that on me, Gabriel. I didn't ask you to what? To love you? He stopped abruptly, turning to face her under a street lamp, snow catching in his dark hair. You're right. You didn't ask. You just were brilliant and stubborn and so determined to save everyone except yourself. And I fell in love with you so completely that when you left, it felt like losing a limb. You don't get to tell me that's not fair. And you don't get to make me responsible for your loneliness. Emma's voice rose, anger mixing with something that felt dangerously like panic. I made a choice 7 years ago that I thought was right. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe we were both idiots, like you said. But I don't owe you. I know you don't owe me anything. Gabriel's voice was rough, raw. That's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to tell you that seeing you tonight, having you here in front of me after 7 years of wondering, Emma, it feels like I can finally breathe again. And that terrifies me because I know at any moment you could decide this is too much and disappear again, and I don't know if I'd survive it a second time. The vulnerability in his admission stopped her cold. Emma stared at him, at this man who'd built empires and cut his mother out of his life and searched for her for 2 years, now looking at her with something that resembled fear. I'm terrified too, she whispered. Because the girl who left you? She did it to protect both of us from the inevitable moment when you'd realize she wasn't enough. And I'm not sure that girl ever really grew up. I'm not sure I know how to stay. Then learn. Gabriel stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. We'll both learn. Together this time, instead of apart. Emma closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every instinct screaming at her to run. His hands were warm against her frozen cheeks, and for a moment she let herself imagine it, learning to stay, learning to believe she deserved this, learning to trust that love could be something other than temporary. Then, her phone rang. The sound shattered the moment like glass. Emma pulled back, fumbling in her purse with shaking hands. The hospital. It was always the hospital. Dr. Fairchild, she answered, her voice shifting into professional mode even as her heart continued its erratic rhythm. Gabriel watched her face change as she listened, watched the softness drain away, replaced by focused intensity. When she hung up, he already knew. I have to go, Emma said, and there was genuine regret in her voice. One of my patients, Lucas, he's 7. His fever spiked and they can't get it down. His mother is terrified and he's asking for me and... Go, Gabriel said immediately. Of course you have to go. Emma looked at him, torn between duty and desire, between the child who needed her and the man standing in front of her covered in snow and heartbreak. I'm sorry. This night, everything you said, I need time to... I'll call you tomorrow, Gabriel said, even though she hadn't given him her number, even though they both knew he'd find it anyway. We're not done, Emma. Not by a long shot. She wanted to argue, to tell him that maybe they were done, that maybe the universe had given them 7 years apart for a reason, but a 7-year-old with a compromised immune system was waiting, and she'd made this choice a long time ago. The children always came first, even before her own heart. "Merry Christmas, Gabriel," she said softly, shrugging out of his jacket and handing it back, immediately feeling the loss of warmth. "Merry Christmas, Emma." He took the jacket but caught her hand briefly, pressing something into her palm. "Don't disappear this time. Please." Emma looked down. A business card with his personal number written on the back in his familiar handwriting. She closed her fingers around it, nodded once, and then she was running through the snow toward the nearest subway entrance, leaving Gabriel standing alone under the street lamp like a figure in a painting titled "Man Watching His Second Chance Walk Away." She didn't look back. Looking back would have broken her resolve, would have sent her running back into his arms instead of toward the hospital. But as she descended into the subway station, Emma pressed the business card against her chest and allowed herself one moment of crushing grief for the perfect Christmas Eve that had just slipped through her fingers like snow. Lucas was stable by 3 a.m. Emma sat in the chair beside his bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his small chest, his mother asleep in the recliner across the room, her hand still reaching toward her son even in exhaustion. The fever had broken around 1, but Emma had stayed, needing to be certain, needing to see the color return to his cheeks and the monitors settle into their familiar, reassuring rhythm. She'd been avoiding her phone, had felt it buzz 17 times in her pocket during the crisis, texts she hadn't read, calls she hadn't answered. Now, in the quiet pre-dawn stillness of the pediatric ward, she finally pulled it out. 16 messages from Claire, ranging from hopeful, "How's it going?" to concerned, "Em, please tell me you didn't run," to borderline frantic, "If you ghosted him again, I swear to God." One message from Gabriel, sent at 1:47 a.m. "I hope your patient is okay. I hope you're okay. I'm not good at waiting, but I'll wait as long as it takes. G." Emma stared at that message until the screen blurred. The presumption of it should have annoyed her, the assumption that there would be something to wait for, that she hadn't already decided this was impossible. Instead, she felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept carefully locked for 7 years. She found herself typing before she'd fully decided to. "He's stable. Thank you for asking." The response came almost immediately, as if Gabriel had been waiting, phone in hand, through the entire night. "Can I see you today? Christmas morning. I know it's fast, but Emma, we've already lost 7 years. I don't want to waste another day." Emma looked at Lucas, at his mother, at the IV line and the monitors and the stuffed bear tucked under his arm. This was her world. Sterile halls and beeping machines and children fighting battles no child should have to fight. Gabriel's world was boardrooms and technology, and the kind of wealth that could insulate you from the raw edges of human suffering. But he'd built that world trying to prevent the suffering that had taken his father. Maybe their worlds weren't as different as she'd convinced herself. "There's a diner on 168th, she typed. "Joe's. I'll be there at 8. She didn't wait for his response before pocketing her phone. If she thought about it too hard, she'd talk herself out of it, would find 17 reasons why this was a terrible idea. Instead, she let herself sit in the quiet of the ward, watching Lucas sleep, and allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, what it might feel like to let someone in again. Gabriel was already there when Emma arrived at 7:53, looking completely out of place in his obviously expensive coat, among the cracked vinyl booths and laminate tables. He'd brought coffee. Her order exactly, cream no sugar. And something in Emma's chest twisted at the fact that he'd remembered after all these years. "You look exhausted," he said as she slid into the booth across from him, and there was such genuine concern in his voice that Emma felt her defenses waver. 30-hour shift will do that. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, grateful for the warmth. Lucas is stable. His mother might actually get to take him home by New Year's if his counts stay up. Lucas, he's the 7-year-old? Gabriel leaned forward, and Emma recognized that quality of attention, the way he listened like nothing else in the world existed except what you were saying. Neuroblastoma. Stage 4 when we caught it. But the new protocol is working. Emma stopped, realizing she was about to launch into medical details again. Sorry, you don't need to hear all this. I want to hear all of it, Gabriel said firmly. I want to hear about Lucas and your research and why you look like you're about to fall asleep in your coffee. I want to hear about the last 7 years, Emma. Every single day I missed. The intensity in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt since him. Since the boy who'd sat across from her in a coffee shop, not unlike this one, and listened to her talk about cellular biology for 2 hours without once looking bored. I can't do this if you're going to be perfect, Emma said quietly. If you're going to say exactly the right thing and look at me like that and remember my coffee order, I need you to be... She struggled for the words. I need to know that this time it won't end with me not being enough. That your mother won't show up with another check and a list of reasons why I don't belong in your life. Gabriel's expression hardened. My mother doesn't have access to my life anymore. After I found out what she did to you, we had it out. She chose her prejudices over her son. I chose my integrity over her money. Emma stared at him. You cut her off? She cut me off first, actually. When I refused to marry Caroline Ashworth, she threatened to disinherit me. Said if I was going to throw away my future on inappropriate attachments, I could do it without Pierce's family money. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Turns out, I didn't need her money. Pierce Technologies was already taking off. I bought out her shares, removed her from the board, and told her she could have a relationship with me or control over my life. But not both. Gabriel. Emma felt something shift, a fundamental assumption crumbling. She'd built her entire decision to leave on the belief that his family would always come between them, that his mother's disapproval would eventually poison whatever they had. When did this happen? 4 years ago. About the same time I finally stopped looking for you and started accepting that maybe you'd left because you wanted to, not because anyone forced you. His eyes held hers. I was wrong about that, wasn't I? You left because you loved me too much to stay. The accuracy of it stole her breath. Emma nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. Here's what I need you to understand, Gabriel said, reaching across the table to take her hand. I'm not the boy you left. I've spent 7 years building a life that's mine, not my mother's blueprint. I know what matters to me now. And Emma, you matter. You've always mattered. The girl from Queens who worked 3 jobs and still found time to volunteer at the Children's Hospital on weekends, that girl was never beneath me. If anything, I've spent 7 years trying to become someone worthy of her. Tears spilled over before Emma could stop them. I'm not that girl anymore either. I'm harder now. More guarded. I've learned to need less. Want less. Because wanting led to getting hurt. Gabriel's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I know. I'm the same way. Built walls so high I convinced myself I preferred being alone. But Emma, the second I saw you in that restaurant, every wall I'd built came crashing down. You terrify me. The possibility of you terrifies me. But spending another 7 years without you terrifies me more. Emma looked at their joined hands, his pale against her darker skin, and thought about how her 21-year-old self would have seen this moment, would have believed it was impossible, would have sabotaged it before it could sabotage her. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. How to believe it's real. How to trust that you won't wake up one day and realize you've romanticized a memory, that the actual me, exhausted and cynical and too busy saving other people to take care of myself, isn't what you wanted after all. Then let me prove it to you. Gabriel squeezed her hand. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, Let me prove it the way we should have done it 7 years ago. Slowly, honestly, with all our flaws and complications visible. Let me take you to dinner again. Let me meet you after your shifts. Let me learn who you are now, not who you were, and let you learn the same about me. And if it doesn't work? Emma's voice broke on the question. If we try and it falls apart? Then at least we'll know, Gabriel said simply. At least we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if. I've done the wondering, Emma. It's a special kind of torture. I don't want to do it anymore. Emma looked into his eyes and saw her own fear reflected back, the terror of wanting something so much it could destroy you. But she also saw possibility, the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real from the wreckage of what they'd lost. Okay, she whispered. Okay, we try. The smile that broke across Gabriel's face was like sunrise, slow, inevitable, transforming everything it touched. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth radiating up her arm. Merry Christmas, Emma, he said softly. Merry Christmas, Gabriel. 3 weeks. That's how long they'd been carefully, tentatively rebuilding what they'd lost. 3 weeks of late-night dinners after Emma's shifts, of Gabriel showing up at the hospital with coffee and pastries he'd learned to pick up from her favorite bakery. 3 weeks of text messages that started professional and gradually became intimate, of phone calls that stretched past midnight, of learning each other again like a language they'd once been fluent in, but had almost forgotten. Emma had started keeping a change of clothes in her locker. Real clothes, not just scrubs, for the nights when Gabriel would meet her after work. Tonight was one of those nights, except he'd asked her to meet him at his office instead of their usual haunts. Something about wanting to show her the company, to let her see the world he'd built. Pierce Technologies occupied 3 floors of a building in Chelsea, all glass and clean lines and the kind of thoughtful design that whispered money without shouting it. Emma felt out of place the moment she stepped into the lobby, even in the navy dress she'd bought specifically for occasions like this, occasions where she needed to look like she belonged in Gabriel's world. Dr. Fairchild, the receptionist smiled warmly. Mr. Pierce is expecting you. 23rd floor, take a right off the elevator. Emma rode up in silence, watching the city shrink below her through the glass walls. She could see the Hudson River, the lights of New Jersey beyond, the sprawl of Manhattan spreading out like a circuit board. Gabriel's world, built from vision and determination, and the grief of losing his father. He was waiting when the elevator doors opened, leaning against the reception desk in shirt sleeves and loosened tie, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in his professional environment. His face lit up when he saw her. You came, he said, as if there'd been any doubt. You asked, Emma replied, and the simplicity of the exchange felt like its own kind of intimacy. Gabriel took her hand, threading his fingers through hers with a familiarity that still surprised her, and led her through open office space, where a handful of people were still working despite the late hour. Emma noticed the diversity of the staff, the ergonomic chairs and standing desks, the meditation room visible through a glass wall. This is incredible, she said honestly. Gabriel, you built this? We built this, he corrected. I had the vision, but it took about 200 brilliant people to make it real. He pushed open a door to a corner office. His office, Emma realized, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the view that made her dizzy, the surprisingly personal touches. Framed photos of his sister Sophie, a worn copy of The Little Prince on his desk, a watercolor painting of the Brooklyn Bridge that looked hand-painted. Did you paint that? Emma moved closer to examine it. You did, Gabriel said quietly. Do you remember? We went to Prospect Park for a picnic, and you'd brought watercolors. You painted while I studied for my economics final. I kept it all these years. Emma stared at the painting, at her 21-year-old self's amateur brushstrokes and felt something crack in her chest. Why? Because it was the happiest afternoon of my life up to that point, Gabriel said simply. You were wearing a yellow sundress, and you had paint on your nose, and you kept laughing at my terrible flashcard system. I knew that day I was going to love you forever. I just didn't know forever would include 7 years of absence. Emma turned to face him, and the vulnerability in his expression made her brave. I'm falling in love with you again, she whispered, and it terrifies me because the first time nearly destroyed me. I know. Gabriel crossed the space between them, his hands coming to rest on her waist. I'm terrified too. But Emma, I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like their kisses 7 years ago. Those had been full of desperate urgency, the passion of youth that burned bright and fast. This kiss was deliberate, patient. The kiss of two people who'd learned that love required more than chemistry. It required choice, daily and conscious, to stay even when staying was hard. When they broke apart, Emma rested her forehead against his, breathing him in. What happens now? Now I show you why I really asked you here. Gabriel took her hand again, leading her to his desk where he pulled up something on his computer. Pierce Technologies has been developing a new patient interface system. We're ready to pilot it, and I want Mount Sinai to be our first partner hospital. Specifically, I want your oncology department. Emma stared at the screen, at the elegant interface that would allow her patients' families to access information in real time, that would streamline the administrative burden that ate up hours she could be spending on actual care. Gabriel, the hospital administration would never approve this. Do you know how expensive? Free, Gabriel interrupted. For the pilot program, completely free. We cover implementation, training, maintenance, everything. All I need is your department's willingness to test it and provide feedback. Why? Emma asked, though she thought she knew. Because I meant what I said about wanting to fix a broken system. Because your work matters and you shouldn't have to spend 3 hours a day on paperwork when you could be with patients. Because... He stopped, seeming to gather courage. Because I want to build a life where our worlds don't just coexist, but support each other. Where what I do makes what you do easier. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she'd been afraid to want. Not just Gabriel loving her, but Gabriel understanding her work well enough to want to help, to see it as equal to his own ambitions, rather than something to be tolerated or worked around. I'll talk to the department head, she said. Dr. E. Reeves has been complaining about the current system for years. But Gabriel, this can't be because of us. If the program isn't good, it's excellent, he said with the quiet confidence of someone who knew his work's value. And yes, I'm offering it to Mount Sinai partly because of you, but also because if I can prove the concept there, in one of the most demanding pediatric oncology programs in the country, I can scale it everywhere. Your department's endorsement would be... He stopped. This isn't manipulation, Emma. I want you to know that. If you say no, it doesn't change anything between us. I know. And she did know. Could see it in his eyes. Show me how it works. They spent the next hour at his desk, Gabriel walking her through the interface while Emma asked increasingly technical questions, pointing out potential issues, suggesting modifications. She watched him take notes, actually listening to her feedback, treating her expertise with the respect it deserved. You'd need to integrate with the existing pharmacy system, Emma said, leaning over his shoulder to point at the screen. And the family access needs better security protocols. Some of our patients are in custody disputes, domestic violence situations. We can't risk... Already built in, Gabriel said, pulling up another screen. Multiple permission tiers, security flags, the works. Emma, I didn't build this in a vacuum. I've been consulting with pediatric departments for 2 years. I know how high the stakes are. Emma straightened, looking at him with new understanding. This is why you've been so busy. Sophie mentioned you were working 80-hour weeks. This and the expansion to 5 new hospital systems next quarter. Gabriel rubbed his eyes, and Emma noticed the exhaustion around them, the weight he carried. The company is growing faster than I expected. It's good, but it's consuming your life, Emma finished. Gabriel, when's the last time you took a day off? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I could ask you the same question. We're both very good at using work to avoid feeling too much, Emma said quietly. Yeah, I know. They looked at each other, and Emma saw her own fear reflected in his eyes. The terror of wanting something that could be taken away. The instinct to preemptively destroy it before it could destroy you. We can't do that this time, she said. We can't let work be the excuse for not showing up for each other. I know. Gabriel stood, taking both her hands in his. Emma, I need to tell you something. Tomorrow night, there's a hospital gala. Mount Sinai's annual fundraiser. I'm supposed to go, Emma interrupted. The whole department is. It's basically mandatory. I know. I'm on the board of directors. I'll be there and... He took a breath. My mother will be there. She's a major donor. I haven't spoken to her in 4 years, but I can't avoid her tomorrow night, and if you're with me, she'll make a scene. Emma finished, her stomach dropping. Gabriel, maybe I should... No. His hands tightened on hers. No running this time. Not from her, not from anyone. If we're doing this, we face things together. But I needed you to know what you're walking into. Emma thought about Patricia Pierce, about that office 4 years ago, about the check she'd refused, and the words that had carved themselves into her sense of self-worth. The thought of facing that woman again made her want to flee. But she looked at Gabriel, at the man who'd cut his mother out of his life rather than compromise his integrity, and she felt something shift. Okay, she said. Together. The relief on Gabriel's face was palpable. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. I love you, he said into her hair. I need you to know that. I've loved you for 7 years, even when I was angry, even when I tried to stop. It's always been you. Emma felt the words settle into her bones, filling spaces she hadn't known were empty. I love you too, she whispered back. I'm still terrified, but I love you. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other in his office high above the city, 2 people who'd lost each other once and were determined not to make the same mistake twice. Outside, the city glittered with possibility and threat in equal measure, and somewhere in it, Patricia Pierce was probably planning how to destroy what her son had found. But tomorrow was tomorrow. Tonight, they had this moment of choosing each other, of deciding that love was worth the risk of devastation. It would have to be enough. The grand ballroom at the plaza was draped in silver and ice blue, crystal chandeliers casting prisms of light across women in evening gowns and men in tuxedos. Emma stood at the entrance in a dress Claire had insisted on buying her, emerald green silk that made her dark skin glow, and tried to remember how to breathe. Somewhere in this crowd was Gabriel. Somewhere in this crowd was his mother. Dr. Fairchild. Dr. Reeves appeared at her elbow, resplendent in burgundy. You look absolutely stunning. Very different from our usual scrubs and coffee aesthetic. Emma laughed despite her nerves. I clean up occasionally. I heard a rumor, Dr. Reeves said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, that Pierce Technologies is offering us their new system. That you're somehow connected to Gabriel Pierce? Before Emma could answer, she felt a hand at the small of her back, warm and steady and unmistakably familiar. Gabriel appeared beside her in a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a classic film, his eyes finding hers with an intensity that made the crowded room fall away. "Dr. Reeves," he said smoothly, extending his hand. "Gabriel Pierce. I've heard wonderful things about your department." "All due to Dr. Fairchild here, Dr." Reeves said, shaking his hand while her eyes darted between them with poorly concealed curiosity. "She's the best we have, though I suspect you already know that." "I do," Gabriel said, and the weight of those two words carried 7 years of history. "Would you excuse us? I'd like to steal Emma for a dance, Doctor." Reeves waved them off with a knowing smile, and Gabriel led Emma onto the dance floor where couples were swaying to a string quartet's rendition of something classical and achingly beautiful. His hand settled at her waist, hers on his shoulder, and they began to move together with an ease that surprised her. "You learned to dance," Emma murmured. 4 years of society functions will do that," Gabriel replied. "Though I'd rather be anywhere else right now, with you. Maybe Joe's Diner, eating terrible pancakes." "These people raised $3 million for the Children's Hospital," Emma reminded him, "including funding for Lucas's treatment protocol." "I know. I wrote a check for $500,000. He said it matter-of-factly, without pretense. "The work you do, it matters more than anything I'll ever build." "That's not true," Emma said quietly. "Your system is going to change lives, Gabriel. You're giving doctors like me the gift of time. Time we can spend with our patients instead of with paperwork." "Then we're both in the business of saving lives," Gabriel said. "Just different methods." They danced in silence for a moment, and Emma let herself sink into the feeling of being held by him, of moving in sync, of belonging somewhere she'd never thought she'd fit. Then she saw Gabriel's expression change, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "She's here," he said quietly. Emma followed his gaze to where Patricia Pierce stood near the bar, immaculate in midnight blue, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. She was holding court with a group of donors, but her eyes had found her son, and the expression on her face was glacial. "We don't have to do this," Emma whispered. "We could just avoid." "No more avoiding," Gabriel said firmly. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers, and led her off the dance floor toward his mother. Patricia Pierce's smile didn't waver as they approached, but her eyes, Gabriel's eyes, Emma noticed with a jolt, were hard as diamonds. "Gabriel, how lovely to see you. It's been quite some time." "Mother." Gabriel's tone was cordial but distant. "I'd like you to meet Dr. Emma Fairchild. She heads the pediatric oncology research team at Mount Sinai." "We've met," Patricia said, and there was a world of dismissal in those 2 words. "Though I believe you were working toward your nursing degree then, dear. How industrious of you to have advanced so far." The condescension was a blade wrapped in silk. Emma felt Gabriel's hand tighten on hers, but she squeezed back, a silent message. "I've got this." "Mrs. Pierce," Emma said, her voice steady and professional. "Yes, I remember our meeting well. I've thought about it often over the years, about how you tried to pay me to leave your son." The group around them went very quiet. Patricia's smile turned brittle. "I'm sure I don't know what you're referring to." "I think you do." Emma took a small step forward, and she felt Gabriel beside her, solid and supportive, but letting her fight her own battle. "You told me I wasn't good enough for him, that I'd hold him back from his destiny, that girls from Queens didn't marry men from his world." "Emma," Patricia began, her voice low and warning. "You were right about one thing," Emma continued. "I did leave him. I believed you when you said I wasn't enough. I was 21 and scared, and I let your prejudice become my truth. And we both lost 7 years because of it." Patricia's facade cracked slightly. Gabriel needed to focus on his future, not on some youthful infatuation. "I built my future," Gabriel interrupted, his voice cutting. "The one I wanted, not the one you designed. And the only mistake I made was listening to you for even a moment, was not fighting harder to find Emma when she left. But I'm not 24 anymore, Mother. And Emma isn't the scared girl you bullied in your office. I'm a doctor," Emma said quietly. "I've published research in 3 major journals. I'm saving children's lives every day. I've built a career I'm proud of, not because of your son's money or connections, but because I worked for it. And the only thing I'm ashamed of is that I let someone like you make me feel small." The silence was deafening. Patricia Pierce looked between them, and Emma saw the moment she realized she'd lost, that her son had chosen love over legacy, substance over status, and there was nothing she could do to change it. "Gabriel," Patricia said finally, her voice tight, "you're making a mistake." "No," Gabriel said simply. "I'm correcting one. Emma is the woman I love. She's the woman I'm going to marry if she'll have me. And you can either accept that and be part of our lives, or you can continue with your prejudice and lose your son forever. The choice is yours." Emma's heart stopped. Had he just... She turned to look at him, but Gabriel's eyes were still on his mother, waiting. Patricia Pierce looked at her son, then at Emma, and something flickered across her face. Loss, maybe, or the first crack in a lifetime of rigid certainty. "I see," she said quietly. Then more softly, "I suppose I should meet her properly then, as my future daughter-in-law." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close. But it was a door left open, a possibility where before there had been only walls. "That would be a start," Gabriel said carefully. Patricia nodded once, then turned back to her companions, effectively dismissing them. But Emma had seen it, the slight tremor in the older woman's hand, the way her composure had fractured just for a moment. Gabriel led Emma away, back through the crowd to a quiet corner near the windows, where they could see Central Park spread below them, dusted with snow and fairy lights. "Did you just propose to me in front of your mother?" Emma asked, her voice shaking somewhere between laughter and tears. "I absolutely did not," Gabriel said seriously. "That was me informing my mother of my intentions. The actual proposal will be significantly more romantic, involve considerably less audience, and, I hope, will not come as a complete surprise to you." Emma looked up at him, at this man who'd fought for her, who'd defended her, who'd spent 7 years building himself into someone worthy of the love they'd lost. "Gabriel Pierce, are you telling me you're planning to propose?" "I'm telling you that I let you go once because I didn't know how to fight for you," Gabriel said, his hands framing her face. "I'm not making that mistake again. I'm building a life with you in it, Emma. However long it takes for you to believe this is real, however many walls you need to knock down, however many demons we need to face together, I'm here. I'm staying. And someday, when you're ready, I'm going to ask you to marry me." The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Emma pressed her hands over Gabriel's, holding him to her. "Ask me now." Gabriel's eyes widened. "Emma?" "Ask me now," she repeated, her voice fierce and certain. "We've wasted 7 years. I don't want to waste another moment being afraid." Gabriel stared at her, and Emma watched him process it. The risk, the timing, the possibility that this was too fast, too soon. Then she watched him choose courage over caution, love over fear. He dropped to one knee right there in the corner of the ballroom, still holding her hands, while the party swirled around them oblivious. "Emma Ann Fairchild," he said, his voice rough with emotion. 7 years ago, I lost the best thing that ever happened to me because I didn't know how to prove to you that you were enough. More than enough. You were everything. And now, By some miracle of interfering sisters and Christmas magic, I get a second chance. I don't have a ring yet. I don't have a perfect speech prepared. But I have the absolute certainty that I want to spend the rest of my life loving you, supporting you, standing beside you as you save the world one child at a time. Will you marry me? Emma looked down at him, this brilliant, stubborn, impossibly kind man who'd built empires and torn down walls and learned how to fight for what mattered. She thought about the girl she'd been 7 years ago, so convinced she wasn't enough. She thought about the woman she'd become, who'd learned her own worth, and she thought about the life they could build together, not despite their differences, but because of them. Yes, she whispered. Then, louder, so he could hear over the pounding of her own heart. Yes, Gabriel. Yes. He stood in one fluid motion, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around while Emma laughed and cried and held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become infinite with possibility. When he set her down, he kissed her, tender and fierce and full of promise. And Emma kissed him back with 7 years of longing and loss and love that had survived everything that had tried to kill it. When they finally broke apart, she realized the entire ballroom had gone quiet, that everyone was watching them, applauding. Dr. Reeves was crying. Sophie was there, beaming, with Claire beside her looking vindicated. Even Patricia Pierce was watching from across the room, her expression unreadable, but no longer hostile. "We should probably leave," Gabriel murmured against Emma's hair, "before this turns into more of a spectacle." "Agreed," Emma said, but she was laughing, giddy with joy and relief, and the sheer impossibility of this perfect, imperfect moment. They collected their coats and slipped out into the December night, where snow was falling soft and silent over Central Park. Gabriel hailed a cab, but Emma stopped him. "Let's walk," she said. "Like we used to." So they walked through the park, hand in hand, while snow caught in their hair and the city hummed with late-night Christmas energy. They talked about everything and nothing, about the wedding they'd plan, about how to combine their careers, about whether they'd live on the Upper West Side or somewhere with more space, about the children they might have someday who would grow up knowing that love was worth fighting for. By the time they reached Emma's apartment, dawn was beginning to lighten the eastern sky, turning snow from silver to gold. Gabriel kissed her at her doorstep, gentle and lingering, a promise of all the mornings to come. "Merry Christmas, Dr. Fairchild, soon-to-be Pierce," he murmured against her lips. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Pierce, who proposed without a ring," she teased back. "I'll fix that today," he promised, "though something tells me you won't care too much about the size of the diamond." "I don't," Emma said honestly. "I only care that you're wearing a matching band." She watched him walk away through the snow. This man who'd come back to her against all odds, and felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe, or the quiet certainty that sometimes love gets a second chance, and sometimes second chances are worth every moment of the wait. Inside her apartment, Emma found a text from Claire. "I told you to trust me. You're welcome. Also, you owe me a bridesmaid dress fitting. Love you. C." Emma smiled, typed back, "Thank you for not giving up on us. I love you too." Then she crawled into bed still wearing her emerald dress, too exhausted and happy to change, and fell asleep, dreaming of a future she'd stopped believing in. A future that now stretched before her, bright and uncertain, and full of the kind of love that survived loss and distance and time. 7 years ago, she'd walked away because she didn't believe she deserved to stay. Now she'd learned the most important truth. Love wasn't about deserving. It was about choosing, every day, to stay, to fight, to believe that two imperfect people could build something beautiful together. And as snow continued to fall over New York City, turning the world white and new, Emma Fairchild chose to believe in second chances. If this story touched you, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for the next journey.